The last morning, the day everything changed. It was still dark outside when Ryan opened his eyes. His alarm hadn't gone off yet. It was only 5:12 a.m., but he couldn't sleep anymore. He stared at the ceiling, motionless, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of cars outside. The city was already awake, chasing dreams, fighting battles. But Ryan lay there wondering if it even mattered anymore. For months, maybe even years, he had been trying, chasing something that seemed to always run faster than him. He used to call it hope. Now, it just felt like exhaustion. He sat up slowly, rubbing his face with both hands. His apartment was small. One room, one dream, and one man trying to remember why he started. On his desk sat a cracked laptop, a half-empty notebook, and a cold cup of coffee from last night. It looked like every other morning, but deep inside, Ryan already knew. This one felt different. He whispered to himself, "Maybe this is it. Maybe today's the last morning." Those words hung in the air, heavy and honest. He had said them before, after failed projects, missed opportunities, and long nights that ended in silence. But this time, it didn't sound like frustration. It sounded like a decision. Ryan was 32. He wasn't a failure, but he felt like one. Once he had dreams of building his own brand, a small creative agency that told human stories, the kind that made people feel. But years of trying, freelancing, saving, failing, and starting again had stripped that dream down to survival. He was now working a dull job at a marketing firm, writing campaigns for products he didn't believe in, while his own projects sat unfinished on a dusty hard drive. Every day felt like a rerun. Same deadlines, same disappointment, same fake smiles on Zoom calls. And lately, even his reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger. He stood by the window, staring at the pale light breaking through the clouds. He thought about all the things he had lost: time, confidence, people. But the worst loss was invisible, the version of himself that used to believe. He poured coffee, sat by the desk, and opened his notebook. The first page was dated 2 years ago. At the top, it said, "1 year from now, everything will change." He smiled weakly. 1 year had become 2, and everything was still the same. He flipped through the pages, ideas, notes, quotes, deadlines that never came true. The ink had faded, but the pain hadn't. He whispered, "Maybe dreams aren't for everyone." His phone buzzed. It was a message from his old friend Chris. "Hey man, how's life treating you?" Ryan stared at it for a moment, then locked the screen. He didn't know what to say. How's life treating me? It felt like a cruel question. He wanted to say, "I'm fine," but the truth was, he was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind of tired that comes from carrying a dream no one else believes in. As the sun slowly rose, Ryan decided something. He would go through the motions one last time. The job, the commute, the polite smiles, and then he'd quit. Quit the dream. Quit pretending. Quit trying. He called it the last morning. He didn't write it down. He didn't announce it. He just knew. By 8 a.m., he was on the train, staring blankly at the people around him. Students with headphones, professionals scrolling their phones, a mother trying to calm her child. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone looked alive. He envied that. When the train stopped at his usual station, he stepped off and walked toward his office. The same building, the same faces, the same fake "Good morning, Ryan" from the receptionist. He smiled back, but inside, he felt hollow. At his desk, he opened his laptop and began working on another product ad. The client wanted something inspiring. Ironically, Ryan had run out of inspiration years ago. He typed slowly, mechanically. Then he stopped. He looked around. Rows of people typing, clicking, pretending to care. He thought, "Is this it? Is this what I gave up my dream for?" For a moment, the noise of the office faded. He felt a lump in his throat. Not sadness, not fear. It was the quiet realization that he was existing, not living. At lunch, he sat alone at a corner table with a sandwich he didn't want. He opened his phone and scrolled aimlessly. Videos, posts, quotes about motivation. All of it felt empty. Then he stumbled on a short clip of a man speaking on stage. He almost skipped it, but one line caught his attention. The truth is, your life doesn't change in a year. It changes in a moment. The moment you decide not to quit. Ryan froze. He replayed that sentence. Once, twice, again. Something about those words hit different. He didn't feel inspired. He felt awake. That afternoon, he couldn't focus. The line echoed in his mind. Your life changes in a moment. The moment you decide not to quit. He thought about all the moments he had quit before, the projects he never finished, the calls he never made, the chances he never took because he was afraid to fail again. Maybe he had been waiting for some big change. When the truth was, change had been waiting for him. That evening, after work, Ryan took a long walk through the city. The sky was painted orange and pink, the kind of sunset people stopped to admire, but he barely noticed. His mind was somewhere else. Back to that line, that idea, that possibility that maybe, just maybe, this didn't have to be his last morning. He walked past a street musician playing guitar. The man's case was half empty, but he played with passion. Eyes closed, lost in the sound. Ryan stopped. He watched. And for the first time in months, he felt something stir inside him. A quiet, painful kind of hope. That night, Ryan sat at his desk again. The same cracked laptop, the same notebook. But the feeling was different. He opened a new page and wrote, "If this is the last morning, let me give it everything." He stared at those words for a long time. Then he opened an old project file, one of his unfinished ideas. It was dusty, messy, imperfect. He smiled softly. "All right," he whispered. "Let's try one more time." He worked for hours, not because he thought it would change his life overnight, but because he missed feeling alive. Every click, every note, every word. It reminded him of who he used to be. The dreamer, the believer, the man who once thought he could make something meaningful. It wasn't about success anymore. It was about rediscovering himself. By the time he finished, the sky was turning gray again. Morning light crept through the window. He sat back, exhausted, but peaceful. He looked out at the new day and whispered, "Maybe it's not the last morning after all." To be continued in part 2, where Ryan S.'s decision to try one more time changes everything. When Ryan woke up, it was already 8 in the morning. The sunlight spilled softly through the blinds, painting golden lines across the floor. He hadn't even realized he'd fallen asleep at his desk. His laptop was still glowing. The project file was open, the cursor blinking at the end of his work. He read the last few lines again. It wasn't perfect, but it was his. And for the first time in years, he felt proud. He stood by the window, watching the city move, cars, people, life rushing by. Everything looked the same, but somehow it felt new. The world hadn't changed. He had. Something inside him had shifted quietly, without applause, without validation. It wasn't a miracle. It was a moment, the kind that feels small until you realize it changed everything. He made coffee and opened his notebook. On the page where he had written, "If this is the last morning, let me give it everything," he added underneath, "It wasn't the last morning. It was the first one that mattered." He smiled. He didn't need a plan anymore. He just needed to start. That day, he worked on his unfinished project again. Not for perfection, but for honesty. Every word he wrote felt like a small piece of himself coming back to life. That evening, he uploaded it to his quiet little channel. No hashtags, no expectations, just a title, "The Last Morning." Then he closed the laptop, exhaled, and let go. That night, he walked through the city again. Same streets, same lights, but this time, the air felt lighter. He passed the same street musician, still playing, still smiling. Ryan dropped a bill into his case and said softly, "You're really good." The man smiled and said, "Thanks. I just try to play one more day at a time." Ryan froze. One more day. He nodded, smiled back, and walked away. The next morning, his video had 17 views. He laughed quietly, not out of disappointment, but peace. 17 people had watched something he almost never finished. 17 souls had felt something. He wasn't chasing numbers anymore. He was chasing meaning. days turned into weeks. Ryan kept showing up. Every morning, a little better. Every night, a little prouder. The project that once drained him now gave him strength. Because he finally understood that the moment you stop doing things for recognition and start doing them for purpose, everything changes. One afternoon, a message appeared on his phone. It said, "Hey, I found your video the last morning. I was going to quit today, but I didn't. Thank you." Ryan read it twice, then again. His eyes filled with quiet tears. He whispered, "This is why I started." From that day on, Ryan began sharing his journey. Honestly, openly. He talked about fear, doubt, failure, and the courage to begin again. People started listening, not because he was perfect, but because his truth was real. His channel grew slowly. One viewer became 10, 10 became hundreds, hundreds became thousands. But Ryan didn't count views anymore. He counted hearts touched. Months later, he was invited to speak at a small creative event. 50 people, one microphone, one story. He looked at the audience, faces full of fatigue and hope. He began softly. "A year ago, I wanted to quit. I called it my last morning. But that morning became the day everything changed. The room went silent." He said, "We wait for the big moment, the perfect timing, the miracle. But life doesn't change that way. It changes quietly the moment you decide to show up, even when it hurts." He paused. "If you're here thinking about giving up, maybe this is your last morning too. But what if it isn't the end? What if it's the beginning?" The crowd stood and clapped, not out of admiration, but because they felt it. That night, Ryan walked home under the city lights. He sat at his old desk, the same cracked laptop, the same notebook. Only this time, he didn't see failure. He saw proof that one morning can change everything. He opened his notebook and wrote on the last page, "It wasn't the last morning. It was the first chapter of the rest of my life." He closed it gently, leaned back, and smiled. Outside, the city was quiet. Inside, his heart was not. It was alive, calm, steady, full of purpose. Ryan whispered, "One more day, one more try. That's enough." He turned off the light. And as the night embraced the world, he fell asleep in peace, knowing he'd never call it the last morning again. Sometimes, what feels like the end is really the beginning. The end. A Wishper's truth. Original story.